Right, welcome everyone. The next multi-networking community sync. Today it's April 17th. And today in discussion, I want to continue, talk about the DRA. Maybe we can reconcile what we had to talk about last week. I think, Anders, I added your comment, I think from chat. We were not able to address it last week.
We talked about the value of having the array.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure whether that got answered or not. So I just copied it because I noticed the question at the as we were closing last week. So I copied that question here, and maybe we want to address it. Before to do, anyone wants to add themselves to the docs? I pasted a link to what I'm sharing. Yeah, so basically, can that be done today? That's where we're trying to go, right? To have non-uniform networks. And that is the kind of value of any type of multi-networking that we're trying to add here, right? I think that's what we're trying to do. So I think that's the goal of this effort to be able to exactly do what you're calling out here, right? To one network being just standard, another isolation network, and it's done the same way as your default one, or call out a network that's completely done in a via the VLANs, for example, if the first one is done through like tunneling or some GNIF or something, and the second one can be done through VLANs or what's not, right?
I also thought it was use case if you have like a partition of the cluster being some kind of edge nodes or something. I mean, where you want to have another network. If you
yeah, exactly. The multi-tenancy approach, right? That's what you're referring to. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure you had a chance to read through that CAP, that PR of the CAP. I think that use case is called out there, right?
But this will be given by the DRA, because if you say that I need to have this, I want to have this, I claim this network, then the scheduler will make sure that your pod starts in a place where you have this.
That's the value added of DRA, that even with our PR, we cut out any notion of node selectiveness, right? Node selective availability for the network. That's something that we completely removed from our requirements to kind of simplify our approach. But then if we were to look at the array, it already has that part built in. So yeah, that part is good, yes. Device management, I'm not sure who.
It's me who added this document.
All right.
Yesterday there was the first DRA meeting. It was mostly introduction and presenting who will contribute and what are the next steps around DRA. So if we want to go in the DRA path for multi-network, I think we should fill this document with our use cases and what we would like to modify in DRA to fulfill our use cases. For example, having the pod, the resource claim scoped on the pod and not on the container, and having status and stuff like that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I see there's various work groups. Is the networking that's us or that's separate work group networking? I see in the doc. Let me maybe share this. This is the doc that you linked.
Yes.
Oh, now I see you. You even, I'm not sure she's here. She's kicking this off. Is work group networking that's supposed to be us, or?
I think it's SIG network in general.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. So we need to add ourselves like as multi-networking. See, and whether that's see whether that's applicable. Yeah.
Or we can just take networking because you wanted to see the default network.
Yeah. No,
running
that's
in the
true.
same way as.
Yeah. That's something that we need to, see how we would fit, and then go and convince SIG networking. So, but I think that you're right. I think that's what might be us. We can get confirmation from Neha on that one. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, let's get back to what we were discussing, and let's try to kind of define what we would think, and then we can just copy paste things there. I think to remind, thanks for the link, Lionel. And maybe since I have you at, can you describe, did you maybe read through what Antonio mentioned, the link? Because he was pointing you to the other resource. I just opened that that cap.
Yes, the structure parameters, yes.
Yeah. What's the difference with that one with what we discussed till now?
So
did you read into that?
Yes, and from what I understood is that they had problem with the scheduling. The scheduling was too slow using the old way, I would say, and then they use this way, so the scheduling part would be way faster. But in the demo that I gave, the scheduling part was not presented. I was not touching to that part. My scheduling, like,
yeah, exactly, because you
super
were
simple.
touching. Yeah, you were touching the bottom pieces. So is that revisit touching anything around the pod? I just skimmed through it. Is that touching at the pod at all, or this is just purely scheduler?
From what I understood, it's only scheduling part, and even the status is still the same way. We cannot update it via the DRA driver, so it will be the same problem as I had last time.
Gotcha. But the link from the claim, because they don't touch claim here, right? Or do they claim? Let me see. Resource claim parameter. There's something like resource claim parameters. Is that for the scheduler, or that's something that is that linked in the claim? Then do you know?
It's in the status of. I don't have the full details, but I think it's in the status. We have these resource handles, and then before we had only field data with just a string, and we could put whatever we want inside. And now we have structured data that the kubelet can understand and then can do like scheduling faster.
Gotcha.
But I don't have all the details. Sorry for that.
Okay, so yeah, I will try to read through that and see. So that's something I need to catch up on. All right, so that's, I wonder whether then, but I wonder whether the claim that we had in discussion, that aspect of pod claim and then custom params, is that aspect preserved?
Yes. There is more details, but I haven't followed everything. So
okay, yeah,
I'm not exactly sure. But the param ref from the resource claim, it is preserved from what I noticed.
So okay, thanks, Manuel. So that's something that I need to myself and need to catch up on this. But yeah, there's a question. No. So to remind from last week, we talked about the legacy CNI. I think that the discussion goes from even further pod status. We touched that. Then we talked about the default CNIs. So the CNI aspect of having the array taking over in some ways configuration of what CNI is being called, all that piece. Then on pod level, the claim to have it on pod level, that's something that we see a gap as well. And then our kind of stance, I assume, from what we would want to achieve from the array to make it a added value for what we need, right? We gain the scheduler. I think we gain I think this is what Anders, what you have been bringing back.
So,
Yes. Someone was talking. No. So maybe let me bring that. Maybe copy that there, or how to do this.
Just to mention the default CNI that is running. So the thing that I sent on Slack is the demo that has been adapted for this thing. So I disable the default CNI, and then the resource claim is attached directly by kubelet in the pod. So I modify kubelet for that, and I have the default running for that.
Oh, okay. And in that case, all the networking is configured through that DRA, Lionel. Is that correct?
Yes, but there is still the problem of the status, how to report the status, because in my case, I mean, in the demo that I modified, the DRA driver is updating the pod IPs, while using the CRI path, the IPs are retrieved in the CRI.
Right, that's done in the CR.
Status.
And, yeah. So basically, your pod comes up without any IPs in status.
Exactly. Yes, and then it comes with the resource claim in the first container, and there's a field in the param ref that says, oh, it's the default. So the DRA driver can understand that and then updates the pod IPs.
All right. That's awesome. So yeah, that's where we want to get to, right? But so the status right now is what we have the gap with. Michael, are you here? Zappa, is that you, Michael?
Oh shit, my microphone was on. Sorry about that. You probably heard me typing.
No, we did not. We are fine. I didn't. No, that's not my problem. So you were missing last week. We missed you a bit because we were calling out, and we would like to hear your opinion on that one. So we were calling out that kind of the aspect of the legacy CNI still being run, because we would like the DRA integration to kind of take over if we were to pursue that path, the whole configuration of down the line of the networking. And we'd like to hear your opinion on that. And basically what I mean by this is, how do you feel if DRA will be the input API to, let's say, KNI in the future?
Yeah, well, so set the stage really quick. I'm missing some context from last week, unfortunately.
That's okay. So we have been Lionel did a demo to give you maybe more context. Lionel did a demo, showed us how he managed to integrate with DRA and add, using Multus at the backend, to add interfaces to the pod via DRA APIs. And basically, we identified in that approach some gaps. One of it was we still run the default CNI, right? Because it was what he did was like on the side. So right now he improved that demo today, where he now managed to ensure that the default is not run. And probably, Lionel, I would like to ask you how you did it, but we'll get back to that. But now, yeah, no IPs, because basically CRI networking is not
Ooh, yeah,
called.
the CNI add is no longer a part
exactly.
of Run Pod Sandbox, and then Pod Sandbox status is no longer a
yes, exactly. So now the question would be, and maybe before we go there, what do you think if the array path that's being done in kubelet have been taken over by, let's say, CNI or the CR, the CNI add, or even KNI? That will be the completely new path, right? What's your thoughts on that? So basically, pod defines the DRA. That whole stuff gets down to DRA, to kubelet. The DRA objects that we pass, because that's something that we called out as well. What if that guy had a specific networking class, right? Like it's hard-coded networking class or something for the DRA claim that would call out that, oh, this DRA is for networking. So this is where, let's say K9, and now I'm hand waving and proposing something like, let's say now K9, a DRA sees its networking and stops at kubelet. Does nothing for those, right? Because those now are handled, let's say, by K9, right? So K9 kicks in and does its stuff by that, because now, oh, I see networking class the claim. So that means that's my pod network definition, and I have to, and I will kick it off.
Yeah. So just to ask some clarifying questions here, the network class would be something kind of, yeah, we would have, we could have multiple networking classes. Is this for the primary network or like your secondary or both?
So maybe networking class is it's not about the type of a network, it's about the type of the claim itself, the array. So on high level, you go into a more detailed level. I'm calling out, oh, this is a claim not for a resource, not for SROV, not for a GPU or some other resource for FPGA or what's not. This is a claim for explicitly pod network, and there it will have some sort of hard-coded class or type, or hand waving here again, we have to go back to the array to is that possible to kind of define, right? And basically when that hard-coded name then means I do nothing, meaning the array does nothing with it, but K9 kicks off for that.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling to figure out, was like, what is and I don't disagree by any means, I just don't know, and CNI, K9 doesn't particularly matter, those are under the covers. What is the networking class like describing here? Can you just give me a visual?
It's just identify. So do I have some, I don't have any pictures. I probably have to create some pictures. Let me maybe find the dynamic resource. If I have a resource claim, or maybe even Lionel's, you had a presentation, right? Maybe
Lionel, do you have some thoughts on here, or where you were going?
Slides. I will try to maybe go through those, and that will help maybe a bit, because Lionel had good objects. Yeah, let me share this tab. So I will borrow your slides, Lionel, to do this. So basically, network plugin. Do I have it somewhere or not? This is kubelet container D.
I think there's only this
here. Oh, this one. That's good. So pod basically references some object, right? And the object is called resource claim, right? Yep. And there is a resource class that's called, let's say, DRA networking, and it's a hard-coded name. That means that, oh, if I and this is hard-coded name, that means that is an indication for both the DRA and the, let's say, K9. For DRA, it means I do nothing with that. That's not my stuff. I am aware that in kubelet, this is something that I do not touch, so that we don't have two implementations for the same. But then K9 knows, okay, now I take over, because that DRA, I understand this DRA is for me, right? So basically what it will do, it will grab this resource claim, because it's DRA networking, and it will find and understand that claim, because it will look at it and it will see, oh, I have McVLAN, some parameters reference to it. It will grab those references and pass it down to whatever K9 is going to do after with it, right? So imagine this resource claim replacing our pod network that we discussed till now. And it will replace it only when this class is set.
I'm just thinking, I'm still playing the catch up with DRA, so I've been looking through the code.
Sure.
So that's where I probably won't be super useful. So I like took an action item for myself to kind of think about this and circle back.
Sorry. All right. So that's what we are thinking of doing, where basically because we want to define an APIs here for this. Lionel went step forward and basically has the whole kind of thing working down below. But I wonder whether this should be more generic, because he's doing it through CDI. should that be the path for the new KNI or what's not? So that's something that I really don't have opinion on. However, that's gonna be done because that's just whatever is the easiest. So that part is, I assume Lionel just did what DRA does today, and he leveraged the existing components for that. And basically, the question is, should we just, for the special class, should we still do that path? Or should we just try to push it towards KN9, for example, right? Or how to as well, how could we, for example, maybe do the legacy approach, like the CNI approach? Because I assume we should be able to support that path as well, where I don't create, I create the array for the default network, and basically I go and just leverage my CNI the way it was, right? For all the clusters that maybe don't want to use multi-networking, right? And to be able to kind of still be having the notions of default network, pod network. I may be hand waving, and I apologize. Okay, I don't want to put you on a spot, Michael. Just something that we were thinking last week to see if that's a possibility to kind of integrate and push forward the discussion towards, like, let's have this special class, and then maybe that class will be handled instead of the array, or will be specially handled by the array for whatever kind of that will take over the CNI. It will be able to do the pod status updates. It will understand the CNIs or whatever you would want to customize there, that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, something that came to mind is, are you familiar with the new working group that, like?
Yeah. That's I think it kicked off yesterday, right?
Yes, and the discussion. I don't know if it's worth having a bullet point for multi-network in that working group, just as a, they're trying to define the scope right now, and getting in front of that may be useful for this.
So
there's
you go ahead.
There is the scope of the DRA, because now it's container scoped, and there is this point. So we have both devices. So I believe that there will be something else than CDI, because CDI is for containers. So I don't know, pod device interface, and KNI could be the one for networking itself. If the array allows different type of resource planes, and then KNI could be the one that replace CDI devices. It will be there only for
the network type, right, Lionel?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. But, so
replacing CDI, I believe it will happen if there is a pod resources.
Right. So what I want to call out as well, the class is just, I'm calling it a class. It can be a type. So I think it's a bit confusing, Michael, because class always means, like, from the gateway world or even ingress, it means some type of ingress. In this case, we need some identification of this claim is for pod network, right? A representation of a pod network. So
but the
maybe
DK device will still be a container net level, isn't it?
I think that still has to be like that. Yes, Anders. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have both, if you don't support that.
And this already works with the current DRA. I don't think we should include it in our discussion.
And that's fair. This is something that we might maybe draw some differentiation of how we would handle SRV and SRV maybe otherwise. I think
don't you still need to declare it to belonging to a network, or are you just talking about, like, the endpoint device and don't care about the rest then?
So keep in mind that there is SRV can be used twofold, right? It can be either user space of a device or a net device, right? And I think the line that we could draw for pod network, and I keep our pod network where it will be part of CNI, will be only to net device. anything beyond net device, and I wonder whether anyone disagree, is net device something that beyond net device we should represent as a pod network? Maybe that should be changed. I think we all come from a case where network attachments were used as a representation for both, right? Because that was kind of unified then. Should we keep the unification? Or should things like, okay, you want to do user space stuff, that means you just need a resource, you need a device, or does that mean that we need to have those connected to the correct interface on the other hand? And for that reason, we need to have it represented as a pod network. I'm not sure did I confuse you too much or not in that sense?
Yeah, because the problem is the word pod network. It's still a container device, but it will speak and listen on a pod network. I mean,
so, and that's true. Listen, it won't, because if, let's say, if and I'm referring to a not net device. Keep in mind, I explicitly call out it's a net device or not, right? If it's
what
a
do you
net
mean
device,
with a net device then? What do you mean with the net? Do you mean something that is represented in the kernel, or what?
yes.
What do you mean with it?
By net device,
Okay.
I mean a Linux net device representation, right?
And ifconfig stuff. I mean, you will see it in ifconfig. So it's not a dev tap or a dev VFI, or I mean, it's not that part of stuff.
Exactly, that's what I'm calling out, right? But then I wonder whether, and this is where my question lies, and please correct me if the use case could be like done. Like, if I'm dealing with user space approach, the VFIOs, DPDKs type of stuff, and I were to use just plain DRA for that aspect, is that satisfactory? Or do I have to know that do I have to point out that I have to have a virtual function that belongs to a interface that is part of a specific network, right? Does that matter or not, right? So that's maybe the question.
It depends. If you want to have a set of user applications that is behind the service, then you actually would like them to be connected to a network, and because the DRA in this case will only give you the device and not care where it's connected.
And that's fair. Yes, exactly. Or I wonder whether DRA can be parameterized. Basically, I can have, and how would that look like? So today, and I wonder, maybe Doc, can you maybe correct me if I'm wrong? Can I have a single network attachment, single NAD that represents both net device and DPDK device, or those are to be separate net device NADs? Do you know?
So
I think you have to have two separate, right, NADs, or not?
Intuitively, I would say you would need two net attached Fs, but I guess it entirely depends on what the terminal plugin is doing that you're calling, right? So it's not unimaginable that you could have some CNI plugin that could handle both the creation of, say, a DPDK as well as a kernel net device. So it's possible. Would I say it's common? I don't know anything that works just that way. But the possibility arises, and the net attached def specification took into consideration as a first class consideration the fact that you may not actually create a kernel net device, right? We allow for that entirely because of the DPDK use case in specific.
Right. So this is where, if we were to unify with DRA, we could make the case that, okay, so the use case, so can we assume that use case is very low chance? Because something that is possible doesn't mean it's used. I don't think I saw that when I think about this, because you have to specify the resource name on network attachment definition, And then the resource attachment definition, this is what holds whether I'm doing DPDK or not, because it's called in SROV operator. And this is where I say, okay, you are DPDK or not, VFIO, IO, or I use the kernel driver, right? So I think for that reason, you have to have separate NADs because you have to point to two separate resources in the node. So I would assume that's how kind of the whole.
I would say that that's probably like more common and more realistic, right? So like a DPK, I don't think it's gonna necessarily require that you use an SROV interface, but I do think that that's the way it's commonly used. Yeah.
But then you would have to. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So a use case where I would pass a meminf interface, or what is it called? But basically some virtual file descriptor into the pod as a user space interface. Yeah, that's fair. And then basically I can do that for one pod, and then I can do just a VTAP or VF pair for the other pod on the same, let's say, network. Okay, and that will be in some, let's say, vSwitch case. I think this is where I'm looking at now, Nathan. I think that's your use case. Is that something that's valid for you, or in your case? Because I know you were mentioning that kind of virtual switch, some sort of virtual switch would be handled. I think on that case, if it's not a resource, it's not a hardware device, it's software, so you don't care, right? At that point.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we are a bit. We don't really care, because in either way we are, even MEMIFs, we took the approach of representing them with dummy interfaces. So in the end, we treat everything as a net dev. That is virtual. We don't be impacted by that. But I agree. I think the use case would still matches what we want to do.
Okay, so then, what I'm driving towards, since if we were to integrate with DRA, which already represent resources, right? If you want to have user space, you just use DRA, which is of different template. Let's reuse the templates, right? And that template will not have the networking type in it. It will be just the standard DRA resource pointing to a specific PF. In some ways, I assume DRA you could achieve that in some ways. I don't know details of DRA so much, but I assume it just enhances today's approach of the resource management on the node. So if we can do it today, I assume you can do it with DRA as well. So you would have a template that points to a specific PF of your nodes, right? And then you can list them out, what's not, right? So you will have template that basically our pod network, the template that points to a DPDK type of the network. And then you will have the other template, which is the standard net device, which will have the network type point into it, which means you are going to be handled by the KNI or equivalent, right? Does that sound feasible? And I probably need to type that down because I think I'm just hand waving and everything is in the air. So I apologize for that, but. Or did I lost you? And basically we need some.
I think I follow what you're saying, and it implies then that we have a set of resources. If you talk about like the VFI or the DevTap or MEMIF, that we have a set of resources predefined and pre-connected to different networks, and we give them names and we give them to the scheduler so it can like count them or something like this.
And that's basically you described DRA. That's what it apparently is supposed to do with even more
sophistication. That would work. It's just more work than I thought.
Because today, when you think about how we do the resources for SROV, right? Today's models, right? I will just describe how Multus does that, right? So by default, if you have all the blows and whistles around the webhooks and what's not, you point to a network attachment definition in your annotation of the pod That network attachment definition points to, as I mentioned, to the resource of the node, right?
Mm.
And that resource represents a SROV device, and that's either user space based or net device, right? What happens next is the network attachment definition defines in its spec it's a SROV CNI, right?
Mm.
So then what happens when Kubelet calls it? Oh, so before that, what happens even further before that is that when the pod is being applied, we have a webhook, and it's called, I think, network attachment definition, or is it in the SRV operator resource? I think it's the resource mutating webhook, which can look at the annotation of the pod and see, oh, this pod uses annotation, network attachment definition. Oh, this resource, this network attachment definition uses this resource. So what the webhook would do when I apply the pod, it will add that resource with just one, depending on how many times you call it out, as a requested resource to the pod spec. That would mean the ending pod would have the annotation for the network attachment, and will have the request for the specific resource that the network attachment calls out, right? So in that name, when that lands on the specific node, finally through a scheduler being aware where the specific resource is at, so that lands on the node. And then before we get to the CNI piece, since we are requesting some resources, Kubelet will pass those paths of those resources into the pod, right? And basically this is done by default, right? And then SRV CNI is called, and now this is where the difference is a bit, because SRV CNI has few parameters. Like for example, one of it is setting MAC address, right? It will by default define whatever the kernel defines, or you can define your own MAC address hard-coded, right? And that's one of the aspects. There are plenty other ones that I'm just calling out this one. So SRV will do that. And now this is where the slight difference is, because with SRV, there is a ask and there is a parameter passed to the SRV MIDPDK, kind of the flag called somehow different, but basically the gist is it has a flag inside SRV. Are you DPDK? So basically, are you user space? If I am, it will set, I think it will set just that MAC address and exit, do nothing else. That's how SRV CNI is called. Basically, it will not do anything else. So at that point, you see it already does nothing today in CNI, though the path is still the same if I have a net device, because if it's a net device, it will see, oh, you have a net device. Okay, I have to assign an IP. I have to push the net device into the pod namespace, set up routes, what's not, whatever is defined in the spec, right? So that's the difference today for the SRV, where it's a user space versus net device, right? That's already there in the code. Here, it will be slightly different, where now the whole thing is handled by the DRA, but then the end result is completely kind of handled by either the DRA path, the CDI, or the non-CDI, right? Whatever is going to be on the pod level, because for the resource, we already have to point to a specific container with that matter, right? So this is where there may be slight divergence will be, because here I will call, okay, what networks do you want to have connected, right? And then the user space thing will be in the container spec, right? So that will be different, right? Today you do it everything in one list. Oh, I want this network attachment, that network attachment, and I don't care whether you are user space or not. I just want those, and then it's all covered. So that's maybe one use case where that's diverges, and maybe it's a bit awkward. I don't know. Opinions, or did I?
Long time ago when I looked at this, I mean, you installed this SRV from Intel, and it said that, oh, your NIC can do like 64 devices.
Yes.
And then those 64 devices was what's scheduled. But here, maybe we want to differentiate them. So we want to have 32 devices on one physical network and 32 on another network. or I mean, they will go in the same port, so it's not really like that. Anyhow, they will be.
So that
I could
part,
have different V tags on. I could have different VLANs on them. 32
that's
of them
fair
with one
because
VLAN.
yeah, and that is fair point, because one of the other parameters that the SRV CNI can do is, as you called out, set a VLAN. But when you set a VLAN, no, I think that's applicable even for user space device, right? Because I think the VLAN is set in the VF on the VF like back
it's on the hardware, yeah. Hardware filtering. But still, I don't know. Maybe I'm just messing this up. But it's just that I cannot really get it straight in my head myself. That's what else. Yeah.
And Maciej, just a question. The reason you took the PCI device is because it is today handled in quite different way than any other, let's call them little bit simpler CNIs, because that one require that's at least today, apart from what you have described, that the pod spec also get injected with the resource request and limit.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that I think even in my current cap, when I was when the folks got reviewed it, and I saw some comments. One of the comment was from Dan Winship, where he was saying, "Can we do something better about this experience?" Right? You know, the what I just described about how we handle the SRV, right? Is there a better use case than that, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Maybe we can just punt the user space approach to just DRA and don't worry about it, right? And then we just gonna handle all the net devices or the devices that will have an IP, right? We only this is where we would draw the line where we do that. But this piece kind of where kind of I don't like that approach, right? Where you have a different kind of experience of compared to like the network attachment definition today and what we initially planned, right? Pod network represents some sort of network for you, whether you do SRV or not, it's still the same, right? And then you have a representation, okay, for that one item, right? And then you list them the same way. With this one, if we were to do this, I think that's one aspect that now when I think about this is kind of cringy. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, then it becomes quite important to understand if we go the way with the array and so forth, this claims parameter set, hence the spec should cater for all these use cases, but especially if we have to have approaching CNIs directly, because someone will consume those or have to approach those claims and consume the information in them.
So how that's going to be handled, keep in mind all the claims point to a custom parameters. So basically keep in mind this is just an API abstraction on top of what you have today. Let's say I use Multus today, network attachment. That doesn't change. What changes is you, instead of adding the annotation, you put it in the DRA section. And with that, you get, let's say, all the pod status set up with all the IPs, right? That's your gains, right? So this is what we did talk last week as well about what sort of gains we have to use it, because as we said, DRA adds a level of complexity, the abstraction level, right? Now it's kind of abstract that you have now one more level of indirection. So it has to come with some value added, right? And basically that value added will be a status on the pod, now properly not the status of IPs on the pod status section, not in the annotations. That's how Multus does that. And then next piece would be I can reference that template, let's say with type network by some other core objects, right? Or let's say gateway API, right? That's kind of the value added that I see by this. I want to have a handler for a network that pods uses, right? That's something that I do want to have, right? Because that will be the value added. Otherwise, we are just doing what we are doing today. It's kind of what we have, the annotations. Everything is one place. What Doug mentioned last week. Everything is in one place. It's all straightforward. I see it at glance what it is, right? Otherwise, it's just complexity. Other comments on that SRV handling? Is that acceptable, or that will be too much of a divergence that it's kind of complex? And maybe other question here would be: do we still need if it's net device? Do we need the syspath to be passed into the pod? Is that something that's important, or whether just net device will be sufficient? I'm not sure you're following me here. So you have two things for a representation of the device. You have the syspath, the kernel kind of path, or maybe not path. It's basically when you request a resource, which is let's say a GPU or like here a SRV device, a network device. What happens, and here I'm hand waving, but Kubelet will give your namespace, your container, a permissions to access that path, that device, and have a read-write access to it, right? So that's what I'm referring to. Do we still need that when it's a net device? Because keep in mind, when it's a net device, it all goes through that, right? I wonder, is there any other use case for when it's a net device for SRV? Do I need all the devices to be passed to my pod, right? Because that would differ as well with this approach, right?
What can you do with it? Set bonding and stuff like this, or what is it for? I mean,
that's a fair point. I don't know. Do you need the syspath for net bonding, or this is all based on net devices?
No, I don't think you should. I mean, you shouldn't get the pod shouldn't go in a mess with the infrastructure, I assume, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you should use it for, but maybe it's good for something. But if this is a normal net device, it will be seen with the ifconfig or IP link show or something like this, isn't it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
But do you think the pod should mess with its own bonding? Shouldn't that be handled by some CNI or something below?
That's how. Is it that how? I think that's a fair question. I think there is a bonding CNI, right? And I think that's what it's done, right? I think you use bonding for that, and the bonding CNI should create your bonding, and you just don't touch it.
No.
That's a fair point.
No. But I don't know. Maybe the pod need this, but I don't really see the need for it.
All right. I think we are kind of at the time. Any other aspects of the array? I will try to come up with some pictures next week. I was thinking about doing this week, but been busy with some other stuff. So we'll try to come up with some pictures to draw this up, what I'm thinking of. I will try to do it by the end of the week so I can share it in Slack channel so that we can show that off next week in the work group. I think so that we can start attending that meeting and start contributing over there.
I'll try my saying it's too much info I have lost, but I have seen either some enhancement proposal or some request to the array specifically about PCI devices, DPTK, SmartNIC, all of that. I just don't remember where. As soon as I hold it, I can share it to everyone. because there were some discussion throughout research as devices or something similar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you there is a Slack channel. You are the Slack channel.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So let's move the discussion over there. Any other topics to this?
You mean to SRLV or in general?
In general.
Just something quickly to mention about from last week, because you were saying that having the status in the resource claim will add complexity for the endpoint/controller, for example. Maybe we could have some benchmarking for this part.
I'm talking from experience, Lionel. It's not like I need to do it because we did that. In GKE.
No, of course. But
so in GKE we deal with scale, and I already can call you out that's an issue.
Yeah, of course. Just to show it, like the endpoint slice cap had some table like comparing the previous endpoints and the endpoint slice, and maybe just
I think we can dig it up, because that's what it would end up being, right? Endpoints is endpoint is exactly another object, and imagine we are going back to that stage, because now, am I right or not? Because now it's reading all the objects rather than that. Right now so maybe it will be not the same, because we will just watch on claims rather than on pods themselves. No, step back, because there will be more claims, right? Because you will have claim per interface compared to pods, right? If you have all pods having at least 2 interfaces, that's double the action for the endpoint/controller. Maybe that's fair, maybe because that's that's a problem on the endpoint slice itself, where it just has to watch all those, and just will be a bit more busy than what it is today. Maybe that's fair, and that's not big of a deal. But then the aspect is of usability. Maybe I will say that as well. Aspect of, because then your status for all the pods IPs is dispersed, right? Is distributed. You don't know what at a glance what you really. So you have said, okay, I'm connecting to those claims. I know those are network because let's say I named them like that. Now I need to go to each of them to look at what the IP they got, rather than just at a glance at one place to see all of them, right? That's maybe I'm picky at this point, but that's one of the aspects of this. Yeah, but that's I think that's fair to look into. Maybe that's something that we can get away with, just that. Fair.
Yeah, sure.
All right, folks, let's call it. I think I will try to attend the next week's DRA work group as well, to kind of see and sit in. I missed yesterday.
It's every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Okay, so let's. I would probably. Okay, so we have 2 weeks.
The community doc is in this note. You can see it.
This guy? No, that's the
proposal. No, above it's a community doc. You can.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah.
So for everyone's knowledge, so that you can. Okay. All right, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.